Hi folks, John Cordisco back again from Cordisco's Chess Center in Binghamton, New York in upstate New York with a game here that was played in the Broome County Championship in 2010. That's held every year here at Cordisco's Chess Center in Binghamton. It's a game that I played, didn't play the greatest in the world, and I'm white, and I'm going to call this game Keep Your Eye on the Prize. And the reason why I say that is sometimes two things happen when you're playing badly and you're starting to lose a game. One is you just either resign or move quickly and hope the game is over, or you dig in your heels and hope for a break. And what happens is sometimes when you're playing the position like my opponent and you've got your opponent right where you want them, you don't concentrate as hard. You don't concentrate as hard as someone that's behind and really trying to do the best they can. You don't keep your eye on the prize. And we're going to go through the game here. I hope you enjoy it. I went e4. Typical Spanish. Kind of boring, the exchange variation, but to tell you the truth, I remember the round before. I'm also the tournament director in the tournament, and it's a lot of work here, and it's held at my convenience store, so I was pretty tired. Anyway, I castled, and he went knight to g4. This was something I was a little surprised at. When I looked up this young man's history, he played chess in the chess in schools about 7 years prior to that. He used to go here to Binghamton University. He's from the New York City area, and must have been something he learned from there. I went h3 to kick the knight, and he went h5, and I was a little surprised. Kind of the Washington Square Park trick, where if pawn takes knight, pawn takes queen comes up. You're basically doomed. I didn't want to really get into that, so I just went d4. He played his bishop. I took, knight took. I played knight took, bishop takes, and then queen takes check, and king takes. Now, as you can see, I'm not going to, next few moves, I make a series of small minor errors that end up getting me all boxed up, and this is the first one of them, c3. Not too smart. I probably should have just moved my bishop. He went rook to e8, and as you can see, I've got two minor pieces on the back rank, and I'm white. I mean, they should be developed. This is move 11 already, and this long should have been developed. I went to chase his bishop with f4. He moved his bishop back to d6. And I continued to push, which probably wasn't a good idea. You get too overextended sometimes with your pawns, as you'll see. It just wasn't playing well in general. It's just sometimes you just can't think clearly. And I believe this is one of those times for me. I went king h2. He went bishop e6. Now his pieces are fully developed. It's going to be interesting in the next few moves how he quote-unquote castles. I went rook check. I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have went maybe b3, moved the bishop out to c3, and try to get some development going, because it's awkward because of my c3 move. It basically makes me suffer for a while, and rightfully so. I didn't really play that well. He moved king to e7, and now this is a move that another bad move, which makes my c-pawn backwards. I can't advance it anymore. I go b4. I wanted to chase his bishop off, but what was the point? I chase him back to b6. He's still just as effective. Sometimes your cylinders just aren't firing, and that's the way it is. And I moved bishop to b2. I finally got him moved. And he went rook a to d8. And this looks awful ugly, but I went knight a3. Just to get the knight out and connect the rooks. He moved bishop to e3, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know what his purpose was on that besides hitting the f-pawn. I'm a king to g3. He went bishop at d5. Now he's going to try to hem me in with his pawns and his bishops. That's the other thing too, is he's got a bishop pair now, so it makes it really difficult for me. And I went knight to c2 to chase the bishop off. He checks me instead. I move king up. Now he tries to get a little greedy here, tries to keep his pawn with bishop to f2. I just went knight d4, cutting off the escape of the dark squared bishop. Now here's where he decides to do a long castling maneuver. And I went knight to f3. Finally do something about the h-pawn. He went king c8. Finally completed his hand castling. And I guess I think he gave me a few tempos here with that hand castling, and I think that got me back in the game, but right now I'm suffering. And a lot of that has to do with my c3 move of the pawn and the pawn on b4. It's funny, you make moves sometimes and you go back over them later, or even later in that game, and you think to yourself, what on earth was I thinking? And then frankly you weren't, and you're trying to remember what your reasons were and you just can't think of any. So it's the way it goes sometimes. I played knight takes pawn, he played bishop takes knight, I took his bishop, he took the pawn on g2, I went king to g3, he moved his bishop to e4, and I went rook to d4, hoping he'd take. At least he would get my center pawns together, and he did. He took, and I took back. And he went rook to e6. Now I don't have a light squared bishop, so it's probably a good spot for his rook. He could have went after my backward d pawn, but he doesn't have a dark squared bishop, so it's really no point. And now the pawn on b4 finally does something worthwhile. I went rook to e1. He went rook check. I went king to f2. Bishop at d5. Now you can't see right now, I've got a computer going. The score currently, according to the computer, is minus 0.82, or 0.8 now. It went down, which means black has a small advantage. I'll be honest with you, my pawns are in terrible shape. I don't know how I'm going to advance them and keep them protected at the same time. I've got a nice slated g-pawn, h-pawn, and I'm just suffering for every move here. And a lot of that had to do with my lack of development at the beginning. And the pawn structure I have now is because of it. I only lucked out to have a center pawn because he took my rook on the d-file. So, and I remember sitting here and I'm just suffering, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, either I want this game to be over or something. I played rook to g1. I was hoping he'd trade rooks, just to simplify it a little bit. Of course, as you're going to see in a moment, I hung a pawn, rook to h6. Now I have to protect my h-pawn, and look what's hanging. I didn't even see him take my a-pawn. Now, I'm not the greatest player in the world. I'm not a grandmaster. I'm mid-1500s in USCF rating. But to hang a pawn like that in an endgame, inexcusable. Inexcusable. And by now, I'm so disgusted. And what I talked about at the beginning of the video, sometimes when you're just playing badly, I don't believe I'm being outplayed. Maybe in part, but I'm just playing badly. Now I have a isolated h-pawn and a b-pawn. And it's just horrendous. If you look on the queen side, he's got 4 pawns against my 1. It's horrible. Or 3 pawns if you can't get by the d pawn. I mean, it's just a mess. So I'm thinking to myself, what do I do? I was so disgusted with myself. I said, well, let's toughen down a little bit and let's try to do the best we can and hope there's an oversight on his part. He went queen to g6. Of course he wants to liquidate pawns now. And I go f6. I got all my center pawns on dark squares. And he goes bishop to e6. I go h4. He goes rook to h5. Now I want rook to f1, basically cutting off his rook. If he wants to put his rook there, he certainly can. King to d7. He's starting to bring his king up a little bit. Went bishop to c1. So I'm going to try to at least keep the rook out temporarily. He went rook h8. He says, you know what? Forget this. I can't get through. Let's bring my rook over to the a side and the queen side and let's see what happens. I went bishop to e3, just guarding my d pawn. I mean, I'm just trying to suffer through a difficult game, and it's my own doing, and I'm just trying to do the best I can. And he went b6, and I went rook a1. He went rook a8, of course, and I went bishop d2. And he went c5. This I don't understand at all. He's probably thinking take. He'll get the pawn with the king. That's what he was thinking. I can't really protect it, at least not for very long. And after that, he'll have a running a pawn, and then it'll be the end of me. And if the bishop takes, pawn takes, king to c6. He's figuring, okay, even if I guard that pawn, he's going to get it eventually with his running a pawn. I went king to f4, bring up the king, might as well. He went a6. Of course, you can't go to a5 because the bishop will take. I went king to g5. Might as well get the king in and on the action. Try to anyway, before he brings his rook back around the h file. Maybe my king deep in his territory will do some good. He went rook to d8, and I went rook takes a6 check. Now you're thinking, my God, king's going to move. He's going to attack your rook, and your bishop is hanging. But what I looked at and saw, because I didn't give up, I tried to buckle under. He was playing lackadaisically. It was a one game for him. He figured there's no way I'll take the a pawn because he'll take my bishop. I took it with check. He'll just move his king, and then I'll have to lose either the rook or the bishop, or I'll have to move my rook back to a2 to guard the bishop, and he just takes. King takes the c pawn, and now he's got another running pawn. He probably just played just to move the move. There's no way he can lose this. But the problem is, there's one problem. I don't know if you can, people can see it or not. This might be a good time to pause the video. What happens when king takes c5, which he did? Look at it now, and if you want to pause the video before I continue, please do. That was the mistake. Let me go back a move. He's black. He sees an isolated pawn. I've got a dark squared bishop. This is a chance to take it. His light squared bishop is being guarded by the pawn. He's going to have a c pawn that's going to run the board, and it looks very good for him. He has an open file. Even if he doesn't take the pawn and goes king to b5, he'll be attacking my rook and my bishop. I don't have to back up. He gets the c pawn anyway. So what's the problem? Why can't you play king takes pawn is what he did. Okay, now is your last opportunity to pause the video, and here is what happens. Rook takes e6 right out of the chute. I remember when I saw it, I got so excited I couldn't believe it. And he looked, the look on his face like, what just happened? What just happened? He took my rook. I checked. He played king d5. King takes g6. Now I've got some dangerous pawns. King takes e5. f7. King to d6. Now everybody's thinking, okay, what's the big deal? he's going to be able to run his pawns. You're not going to be able to stop both of them, but it's just too late for him. King to g7, rook to d7. He's trying every desperate attempt now. At this point, he was mindset that I had earlier in the game. He's just so disgusted with himself for not seeing that simple move and moving too casually. In other words, sometimes when you're under the gun and you're really trying, and you're on the opposite side of the board, you're winning, and it seems so easy that you lose focus. You take your eyes off the prize. You have to keep your eyes on the prize, of course. Next move, I moved king to g8. He checked. I queened. He played rook takes. I played king takes. Now he's probably thinking I'll be able to cut back across and hold that pawn. But there's a couple things I noticed earlier on that I didn't mention. If you see the color of the bishop, the dark squared bishop, and you see the queening square is also a dark square. Very important. And at this point, he tried to bring his king over. I pushed the pawn up. Now if you look at it here, the king's going to have a hard time moving in. He can go to here, but he can't go here or here because of the fact that bishop's covering one square and the pawn's covering the other. He moves his king over, and he's basically stuck there. I move the king over, and now of course the pawn just sails. He tries an attempt at c5, and I just continue pushing my pawn because my dark squared bishop is guarding this queening square, and he resigned. And I remember there was a couple of guys, long-time chess friends of mine, they were watching the game, and I heard one mumble when I played the rook takes the bishop. I heard him say, "Oh my God, Cordisco looks like he's going to win this game." And I was happy that I won, but the lesson for me was don't play lackadaisical in the opening. He was a much lower rated player than myself. I forget what it was, but it was much lower. I took it for granted, and I just played loose, and it cost me. And the same thing happened to my opponent. But unfortunately, it's like anything else. It's not how many mistakes you make. It's who makes the last mistake is usually the person that loses. I kept focusing on what I had to focus on. His game was almost too easy to play, so he didn't have to really think. And so that's a lesson learned, hopefully, by myself and my opponent. I assume he lives back in the New York area now. He's probably graduated from Binghamton University. But if he happens to see this video, and his name is Dario. Dario, nothing personal, buddy, but I learned a lesson. I hope you did too. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I want you to remember, folks, that if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. And I'll see all of you in my next video. Bye-bye, folks.